All right, what's up, guys? We are here live, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Give me 1 second. We are live here, as I said, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. I'm happy to have a special guest on with us today. Give me 1 second. We have Miles Doleac, writer, director of The Dinner Party. Let me get him on. Hello, Mr. Doleac. How you doing?
I'm well, Brandon. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So first things first, like I said, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate you coming on and talking about the film. I had a chance to see it. So just to start first, I guess I'll ask, what was the inspiration, behind the film? You directed it, you co-wrote it, so.
Absolutely. Well, this film was the very first feature I've done that I hadn't written from the ground up. This script was brought to me by one of our fellow producers, James Bullion, in its foundational stages. That was the work of Michael Donovan Horn, my co-writer on this. And I read the script. I thought it had a lot to recommend it at the time. It had this cool sort of rogues gallery vibe to it. It had this fascinating psychoanalytical angle about how perhaps a lot of the folks that we would consider quote unquote bad people or abusive people have actually at some point in their journey been victims themselves, and that has sort of colored their behavior, and they've used inflicting trauma as a kind of coping mechanism for their own trauma. So there were a lot of interesting elements I thought about that initial version, the bones of the script that Jim presented me. And it just needed something to sort of tie the whole narrative together. It just felt incohesive in some ways, despite the fact that it had these fascinating characters and this really interesting hook. And so Michael and I worked on the script together. We came up with the character of Sadie, who really became the driving force of the narrative and where we wanted to go ultimately. The film has a lot of elements of things that pieces that I found fascinating over the years, like The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, or Eyes Wide Shut, or even Darren Aronofsky's Mother, which is just a totally wacky swing for the fences kind of film that, love it or hate it, you have to admire Aronofsky's cojones, really just going for it. And I loved the fact that we this was a piece we could almost approach like a painting, like a piece of art or opera. And we certainly did that with the visual aesthetic of the film. We were inspired by Baroque artists like Caravaggio and Ribera. And, of course, the pacing and the tropes that are found in the operas that we discuss in the film, whether that's Bluebeard's Castle or Vasek or Pagliacci or whatever it might be. So it just provided such, I thought, a fertile ground to play in, while at the same time having some social currency that I think is important due to the aforementioned psychoanalytical angle that I was talking about, and the fact that it's very female forward and sort of speaks to the issues of femininity and the divine feminine and things that I thought were really important, and also to this sort of increasing divide that COVID has certainly, ripped the Band-Aid off of between the elites and those who don't have or not in a position financially to have these luxuries that the people at this dinner party have. So there was just a lot of. I just thought it was a fertile sandbox to play in, and we just took it and ran with it.
Gotcha. So, just as you said, all those things, I saw, whether it was, what you were commenting about, the trauma that a lot of the characters were suffering. And actually, it's funny that you brought it up towards the tail end. I was going to bring up that ideal of, the elite or the one percenters, or however way you want to, describe it or label it. The day and age that arguably could be said, with what we have with social media and so much importance given to that and all those things. And how fascinating it is, because it was a comment on, I feel like it comments on the importance that's placed, or the willingness that the protagonists have in, going above and beyond to get to this, perceived stature of being, a lead, even though, you have all these red flags that are going off, like something's up, something's wrong. They were able to see past it, or were looking beyond it, just for the sake of being a lead or being perceived that way. So, that part I found fascinating. And are you able to comment, a little more on that piece as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously so many aspire to be part of that 1% club, right? And then many of the folks who are there, or who scratch and claw and sell their souls to get there, wind up abusing that position, abusing their power, and abusing their status, and using their money, and their success toward ill ends. And that's certainly what we find happening here in the dinner party. Despite what they all have experienced in their own past, they have allowed that to, along with their wealth and status, to turn them into these kinds of monsters. And so, yeah, that's certainly an enormous element, that and component of the film, which I think is something that we face as a society, and not only in the United States but around the world. The fact that a lot of the really successful folks on our planet use their status and use their money to harm instead of to heal and to help. That's not universally true. I mean, there's a lot of good folks with
Right.
resources out there. We've seen them rise to the fore in the current pandemic scenario. We've seen so many actors and artists and people with means step up and donate and do some amazing work. It's just that you wish that those folks were in the majority, and not folks like the ones hosting this dinner party.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, on a lighter note, with the idea of the idea of the dinner party, have you yourself perhaps been, or let me put it this way: what is the weirdest dinner party that you yourself have been privy to? Or maybe it's not a dinner party, maybe it's just a party, since we are on the subject of this film.
I mean, having been around this business a long time, and having lived in New York and Los Angeles and New Orleans, and been around all kinds of sets and high profile folks, I've seen a lot of quirky, weird things. I think maybe the weirdest or the most surreal experience I ever had at a dinner party was the biggest dinner party in the entertainment biz. That was the governor's ball of the Academy Awards, which I attended many years ago as a cater waiter, because most of my time spent in LA was working in the hospitality industry, and just being this close to Tom Hanks, or to Russell Crowe, or to Steven Spielberg, and yet being 1,000 miles away, and just watching those, at that time in particular, just watching those folks move through that space and inhabit that world, which I so desperately wanted to be a part of. And at that time, of course, I was quite a long way from it. Yes. And, and at one point during that affair, Tom Hanks requested the wonderful Tom Hanks requested some pizza for his family, which wasn't on the menu, but of course Tom Hanks asked for it, so we made it happen. So that was a pretty surreal experience for me at the time. You know, that was the Castaway Gladiator year. So what was that?
So Miles, I'm gonna pause you real quick. It looks like we had slight technical difficulties. So you
Okay.
said, I apologize. Can you give us that awesome story?
Oh yeah. So the most surreal dinner party I've ever been to, at least surreal for me at the time, was many years ago when I was living in Los Angeles and working as a cater waiter, and I catered the governor's ball of the Academy Awards. And this was the year that Gladiator won Best Picture. This got to be, what, 15 years ago or so now, at least. And moving through that space and seeing all these people, from Tom Hanks to Spielberg to Russell Crowe, you name it, being, you know, this close to them, and yet 1,000 miles from where I wanted to be as an artist, as an actor myself at that time. And I was attending to Mr. Hanks' table, and he requested some pizza for his family, which I just thought was absolutely apropos and perfect for Tom Hanks. Pizza wasn't on the menu of the governor's ball that year. There was, you know, Wolfgang Puck and all these other folks were catering, and it was really high-end stuff, but it was Tom Hanks, so we made it happen. But, you know, I don't know if I'd call that weird, but it was certainly surreal being in that space at that time and being so close to all those people that I was dying to work with, and you know, to be in that sphere, but, you know, certainly at several arms length away.
Gotcha. I guess, let me see. Yeah, there we go. No, that is definitely surreal. I know you were commenting before on the feminist aspects that is present in the film. And with that being said, there's such a pivot turn that happens. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but there is a pivot turn that happens that are you excited to see, you know, how audiences are going to respond to that pivot turn, or that event that happens?
I'm very excited to see how audiences respond. Female representation is something that's always meant a great deal to me, and certainly we focused on that on the past couple of films, this one and Hallowed Ground, and I'm hopeful that people will really embrace that turn and embrace that twist, and that maybe we've given them some breadcrumbs along the way to sort of follow along. And you know, I think it's so important. Representation is so important. Not only creating better roles for women, but ethnic minorities, LGBTQ. I mean, the fact of the matter is, for the longest portion of the history of our industry, it's been dominated by white men. And, you know, they get all the dialogue in movies. And, you know, we're trying at Historia Films and in the films that I work on, in some ways, some small way, to change that dynamic. And I you know, I hope this film helps that movement in some way.
Cool. So moving on next from that, as I said, that pivot turn and what we have going on in the film. I guess my next question outside of that pivot turn is, you know, what's coming up next? Can you comment on what that is?
With COVID, a lot of things are up in the air. And I had a couple of projects that I was planning to work on, one over the summer as an actor, and then following on that, another Historia Films project that I was going to direct and act in. But we're sort of laying the groundwork now. The project over the summer has been postponed for the moment. We're sort of laying the groundwork and trying to figure out what our next steps are and how we can proceed in the safest way possible. Obviously, safety is a major concern. Not only in actual fact, but we want our cast members and crew members to feel safe on sets. because that peace of mind is as important as, you know, taking those necessary steps to ensure the safety of our performers and our crew itself. But right now we are there are some things in the pipeline for sure. But right now I'm focused on getting the dinner party kicked out into the world. It's going to blast onto the scene on June 5th on all the major streaming platforms and on your cable VOD menu. We had planned a theatrical release for it, at least a small theatrical release and some events in Los Angeles and New Orleans and whatnot. But obviously with the pandemic, we had to rethink those plans. It is the type of film that I urge your viewers to watch on the largest screen possible and with the best sound possible, because we spent a lot of time thinking and planning and prepping for the visuals in this film. And I love this. I love the score as well, written by my good friend Clifton Hyde. But I really have to shout out to my director of photography, Michael Williams, on this. I mean, he just did a tremendous job, and he and his team. And my colorist, Bradley Greer. This is the fourth movie now that I've worked with Bradley on, and he's just the best in the business. So we won't be able to watch it in the theater for a while at least. But please do aspire to watch it on the biggest screen possible. That means, you know, not your iPhone. Nothing against watching stuff on iPhones, but if you can watch movies the way they're intended to be seen, I think that's always preferable.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Miles, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time. Again, the dinner party, guys, comes out on June 5th. And till then, Miles, thank you so much, man. Really do
My pleasure,
appreciate it.
Brandon. Take care, my friend.
All right.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye.